Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Colony Drop, a Gundam podcast. My name is Brian.
And my name is Isaac. This is your favorite Gundam podcast where we talk about everything from the anime series, Gunpla, lore, theories, and Gundam news.
I think there's been some low-key, huge Gundam news lately.
You don't say.
Did you say that's accurate?
I would say it's very accurate. In fact, took the words right out of my mouth. It's low-key, but it has massive implications. Gargantuan implications, Brian.
So I guess to set this up a little bit, we've all kind of been waiting on the first film in the Hathaway's Flash trilogy to be released. And the first film was originally scheduled to come out in July of 2020, but because of COVID, it's now been delayed 3 times. So originally it was delayed to May 7th of 2021, then to May 21st, and now to a future to-be-determined date, because basically Japan's state of emergency was supposed to end before that 21st date, I think, and now it's been extended until the 31st, so I guess they just decided to kind of say, hey, we'll just make it TBD for now, which is probably smart, right?
Probably. I mean, I haven't kept up too well on the situation, but I believe vaccination is much lower than here in the United States, so things are coming up to speed at different parts of the world at different rates.
Yeah, Japan apparently, I think their vaccination rate last time I checked is like low single digits. I read 2%,
Yikes.
Maybe it's a little higher than there, but it's pretty low. I think in general, it seems to be like 2 causes. That one, just in general, the Japanese people did a pretty good job of controlling it, so their caseload is low relative to other countries. So I think, they felt that, okay, maybe vaccines aren't quite as of a priority. And then 2, it sounds like Japan's population, from what I read, they're fairly distrusting of vaccines for some particular reasons.
They'd fit right in at some states and some areas here.
Yeah. I mean, I think there was maybe some lawsuits and some bad actors before on the vaccine front in Japan. But
wow.
And Japan's kind of whole goal is they're trying to make sure that the 2020 Olympics, which now are starting in July of 2021, go on kind of as scheduled, or they don't want to be delayed again. They're in Tokyo, and if you know anything about the Olympics, it's worth basically billions for your economy, and you also have to spend probably some billions to establish all the arenas and stadiums and stuff.
Nope. Cancel.
Yeah. So I mean that we're getting pretty close, right? So we're already end of May, and Olympics are supposed to start in late July. That's only 2 months away. I don't know how it's going to go. I think there is some pressure internally in Japan. Some people don't want it to go forward. They want to just cancel it.
The emperor will not be displeased.
Yeah, I mean the emperor, and the prime minister, I'm sure they're looking at it from a like a GDP kind of. Olympics is a big deal. We can't really lose this. We spent so much money on it. But then, yeah, you have to balance that with the COVID risk. So
they're like, we're Japan guys, okay? We're like one of the coolest countries ever. We have to have these awesome Olympics here. We can't skip it.
Yeah, man, they built that Gundam for the Olympics. The new
know.
life-size RX-78, man. The thing moves.
It's going to hold the torch.
Oh, that would be amazing. Is it really going to hold the torch?
No, I'm just saying.
Oh,
it's a beam torch, Brian.
That would be amazing. If they don't already have that in the design, they need to add that. Oh. They still got 2 months.
I'll email the emperor.
Yeah, get right on that.
I'll hit him up on Twitter.
But I mean, it's just kind of weird, right? Because they delayed it for like a year, and then that second delay was only like 2 weeks, from May 7th to May 21st. I mean, clearly they thought things were going to be good. They were going to lift that declaration. I guess they didn't do it. So either way, Hathaway's Flash is unfortunately caught in this COVID situation, and it's kind of delaying the thing. Why does this matter? The side effect of this is it seems like the Gundam producer, whose name is Naohiro Ogata, yes. Probably, Ogata-san probably. He seems to be doing a lot of interviews, Isaac, with different publications in Japan, and primarily around Hathaway's Flash. It's about how they developed the film, why he chose a director, various things. And so we've learned a lot of interesting things about Hathaway's Flash, this movie, this adaptation, as well as stuff that's coming after Hathaway's Flash, which I'm not sure if he really set out to do that when he did these interviews, but it certainly came out. So I think we're going to talk about 3-ish main things today, but just in general, it's all news from stuff that this producer has been saying. So
it's like the MS Igloo news update. Like it's gonna say Earth Federation Space Forces Los Angeles.
Yeah. And it's just weird because I feel like it was he said so much in like 2 sentences, and I was like, wow, that was a lot of new info that we didn't really have confirmed. And like, he is the Gundam producer, and him saying it is basically confirmation. Yeah. So,
by the way, we're gonna make all this content. All right, I'll see you guys later.
Yeah, and I was like, what?
Pretty much what happened. Like, what?
Yeah, but in terms of, so we'll get to that part after we talk about Hathaway, because I think that part's a little juicier. But in terms of Hathaway, is there anything in particular that you found interesting that he said, Isaac? And I guess I should say a good source to read all this stuff is GundamNews.org. Been looking for a good Gundam news site for the last few years, and I really like this one. I used to read Gundam Guy's blog all the time, and I think he shut down probably like 5 or 6 years ago. So.
Oh, I was about to say, did he shut down because of COVID?
No. It was way before that.
Okay. Okay. Not really. I was just more focused on the fact that, delay, possible delay. And everything's up in the air. So maybe the delay won't be as bad as we think it is. Maybe it'll be extended. Who knows? I don't really know what specifically is happening in Japan in terms of how they're actually working on projects, what's been extended, or they're working from home. Who knows? Right, Brian? It could be, it's anyone's guess.
Yeah, in terms of timing, I mean, they really want this in theaters. They made it as a theatrical film, and I think this one is set to open in like a record number of theaters for a Gundam film for the franchise. I think it's like 240 theaters, which is a lot for Japan. So, they definitely want it to release in theaters. They don't want to just put out the DVD, right? I mean, this was supposed to be like, a big kickoff event for the trilogy. So they're going to wait, I think, until they're able to open up the theaters. I hope that's not too much longer, but yeah, I mean, I actually would think if they cancel the Olympics, it might get released faster, because then like the risk of the Olympics is like all these foreigners basically coming into Japan, right, that might have COVID and could, infect the population because they're not vaccinated. But like if that doesn't happen, then I guess that risk maybe goes down a little bit.
Okay, anti-vaxxers in Japan, they're kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't, if I'm understanding their logic right. They don't want the vaccine because they don't trust it for whatever reason, but they don't want foreigners coming in, even if the foreigners are vaccinated.
I don't know. I don't really know what they're thinking, but
I would assume Japan's on the short list of countries that would require a vaccine passport, right? Like
probably, yeah. I imagine so.
Japan has to be at the top of that list on very health conscious advanced countries.
Yeah, there's so many countries and people coming in for the Olympics. It just seems like a situation. If you were writing a movie about like an out of control virus, the Olympics would be like a super spreader event, right?
The virus hasn't spread very far in the country because they've been very good about their measures, preventive measures, even though vaccination's been low. So why not just release the movie? Right? These people aren't going to get the vaccine anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've had like maybe some increases in cases lately, and that's why this newest emergency declaration got put in place or something.
Well, if there's 20, there's 100.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's probably still low than like what we have over here. I'm sure the government is thinking from a conservative perspective of, hey, there's only 2 months to the Olympics. We can't let this get out of control, so let's just lock it down.
Sir, what about animators? We'll lock them down too. Tell them to stop work on Hathaway's Flash.
Well, I think the first one's done. I mean, it's been done for a long time. They're probably just waiting to get it out in the theaters because they want that theatrical release, that ticket revenue. So, but yeah, who knows what's happening with the second and third one? I mean, hopefully they're still able to work from home. I mean, I know, for example, the American film companies, particularly the animators, I think they're making films from home at this point. So,
yeah, I mean, on the bright side, though, what the article does tell us is that this is almost the first Gundam film of its kind because it has a very live-action feel to it. Not that it's, photorealistic or anything like that, but according to the director, they approached it like they were making a live-action film, and it's going to feel much different than other Gundam anime and film series.
I noticed that they said that they allowed the director to change all the legacy sound effects, so I think he's going to have different beam sounds, which will be interesting, right? Because generally the beam sounds are pretty consistent.
Wow. So the mono eye is going to make a different noise. The
I don't know.
the walking Zeonic mobile suits are going to go. It's going to be like or something.
Could be. I don't know how much of them they'll change, or all of them, or some of them, or what. But it sounds like at least a few of them will be different.
Wow.
So that'll be interesting.
For the beam saber, we decided to record a blowtorch being turned on.
The one article with the producer that I thought that was the most interesting was when he answered the question, why hasn't Hathaway's Flash ever been adapted until now? Because if you think about it, there was that like pretty strong run there from 79 through 89 when they made Char's Counterattack.
Yeah.
Of just full on, let's adapt everything Tomino does.
Right.
And then they just never adapted Hathaway's Flash. And now it's 30 years later.
Yeah, to new fans, I mean, or to anyone listening that maybe hasn't watched Gundam for like a long time, Hathaway's Flash is not new content. It's from the last century.
Yeah. So. It's from a few novels that came out in like, I think 89 through 90, I believe. So, it's 30 years old. And he kind of gave like 3 reasons, which you could probably guess on some of these. The first reason was basically, look, Penelope and the Kasi Gundam, their designs are just very complicated. And if you go look at those Gundams, you're like, yeah, that looks more complicated than a normal Gundam that I'm used to seeing. And if you can imagine trying to animate that 30 years ago without the use of 3D computer graphics, it would be very difficult. And the second reason is kind of related because both the Penelope and the Kasi are huge. Like literally they're bigger than most mobile suits.
You've heard of miniature mobile suits. Well, now you're about to hear about massive mobile suits. We're going the other way. Why not double your reactor? What's the downside?
It's just easier to get shot out of the sky, but
that too. Oh God, Penelope. Like, what's the point of dodging? Just devote more to armor or something. Those shoulders.
The original Gundam is, I think, 18 meters or 19 meters or something. I'm pretty sure the Penelope is like 32.
Oh God.
And that's because they're both of those suits are equipped with a Minovsky craft system, which is typically only used on like capital ships and some mobile armors. Yeah, it's what makes them be able to float, basically. Ogata said that, that's traditionally difficult to animate with those complicated designs. And so they developed this new way of animating it with like a blend of hand-drawn and 3D. I think at one point, doesn't he even say like, the visual quality of this film is beyond anything that Sunrise has ever done before? Like that's a tall claim.
Yeah. Like, I wonder if there were some looks at Sunrise. Like people started looking around at each other like, what did he say about us?
Was that a compliment or an insult?
Hey, buddy, I worked on Unicorn.
And then the last reason he gave was just that the timing was off for the story 30 years ago. The story is different. It's not just Zeon versus the Federation. It's about immigration and terrorism. So that's not quite the same high concept story, right? That might be harder to sell 30 years ago than it is today.
Yeah, much smaller conflict. There won't be massive fleet battles and sides changing hands a lot. It's almost a personal story that happens to have Gundams in it.
Right. Yeah. If you want to read about Hathaway's Flash, all those interviews are up across there's different websites that have them. I think I saw 1 or 2 of them on like Anime News Network, but GundamNews.org has them all. But I think the stuff we really wanted to talk about today, Isaac, was what he said about the future.
The future. What does the future hold, Brian? What did he say that we can generally infer and expect to be coming down the pipeline from Sunrise?
Well, if we step back, remember the UC NexT 100 project, Isaac, where Sunrise declared that, hey, we're going to go into the next century. We're pushing forward. We're going to fill up that timeline with content. And there really hasn't been much news beyond Hathaway. I mean, since the UC NexT 100 has started, we've really only had Gundam Narrative, which was a sequel to Gundam Unicorn, which received mixed reviews at best.
I wonder why. I haven't seen it, but like considering how it looks, how close it looks to Unicorn, I guess, I wonder why it didn't do that well.
I don't think it's a visual thing.
The story.
I think it's a little weird as a story. Yeah. I haven't seen it either, but the certain spoilers I have encountered, I was kind of like, If you really loved like Gundam Unicorn's last episode, I think you'll really like Narrative. But if you didn't really like Gundam Unicorn's last episode, probably won't like Gundam Narrative. I'll leave it
I
at
don't
that.
think I like. Yeah, I think Gundam Unicorn might have peaked in the middle. But anyways,
Yeah, that we'll leave that conversation for
yeah,
another day. But
we'll
I
get to
I think I
yeah.
firmly agree with you on that point.
Anyways, yeah.
He said like two sentences here, Isaac, and in those two sentences he
Right.
said so much, way more than we've gotten over the last like year or two about this. He said, I'm just going to read the whole thing. It's very short.
Do it.
He said, "Oh, Unicorn isn't over yet. We have to tell the story of the Republic of Zeon's dissolution in the year 0100 of the Universal Century before we can move on. However, Harutoshi Fukui, who wrote the novel for Unicorn, is currently traveling to another universe." And then he laughed. So right there, you're already like, oh, Unicorn sequel, right?
You're like Zeon.
And then right after that, he just tacks on this little bit. He's like, oh, and I'm also thinking how to adapt the era leading up to F91.
2 bombshells.
Yeah, that's 2 bombshells. Absolutely. We've been clamoring for news on this or clarity, and he kind of just like off the cuff gave it to us, right?
Bombshells in our eyes and in our face.
Let's take those separately, Isaac, because that basically confirms 2 things. 1, we're going to get a Unicorn sequel, and then 2, we're going to get something after Hathaway's Flash. Hathaway's Flash takes place in UC 0105, and F91 takes place in UC 0123. So that's 18 years to fill in there. But before we fill in there, we're probably going to get something Unicorn related. So let's talk about Unicorn first.
Do it.
So Unicorn, as we've said many times, that was a huge cash cow, Isaac. We predicted that they would have a sequel to this, and seems like that's going to happen. And that makes sense, don't you think?
It has to, because Unicorn was peak Gundam in terms of animation and the effects, the story. Yeah, it stumbles in some parts, but overall, it's probably the best Gundam series you can watch. Arguably, I'll say arguably, because there's a lot of people that like maybe they fell in love with something that was older that they originally watched. But this show really, they pulled out all the stops and all the breaks for it. So yes, it's great that we'll be seeing Unicorn, and especially we'll be seeing the actual end of Zeon, which Unicorn's pretty much been all about, if you think about it from an overview, right? I mean, we've had the whole Laplace's box thing, we've had Mineva there, the full frontal, the sleeves, which are pretty much what's left of Neo Zeon. So yes, we're going to get that from Unicorn.
I agree. I think it's definitely the best modern series for someone who doesn't already like the old Universal Century series. Like if someone wants to get into Universal Century, they're probably going to have Unicorn high on their list, right? So that's why it's the most accessible. And I think that's why Sunrise put so much effort into all the merchandise and just, everything during that era.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a Zeon focused story. I mean, you got Mineva. If they're going to tell the story of Zeon's dissolution, which I don't think we really know too much about in general, right?
Right. I mean, it's pretty much like a sentence, and like depending on what content you're reading, that's it. It was like a little blip on the timeline. Republic of Zeon rejoins the Earth Federation, and then decades later, we get into F91 and all the other stuff that happens after that. So why not have a story about it finally ending? And dare I make a prediction, Brian? Mineva goes down with the ship.
So that's my question for you. What is your version of Zeon's dissolution? Like, where do you see this story going? I'm going to say clearly I think it's a Mineva story, right?
Right. She's going to have a big role in it. There's going to be a Gundam involved in some type of secret project or secret mission. And I'm going to guess that the forces within the Federation are going to do something corrupt. Maybe underhanded to try to get Zeon to collapse faster than it probably normally would have. And then there's going to be some secret Zeon loyalists in the Republic of Zeon that are going to try to make one last stab or attack at the Earth Federation, and it's not going to go well. But I do think ultimately, if you look at Unicorn and a lot of the other series, even going back to Zeta, really, Mineva and anybody with a Zabi last name has always been essentially a glorified flag that anybody Zeon or Space Noid can rally around and keep fighting. So once that's gone, you really don't have anything Zeon left.
That's a fair point. And, Mineva, to my knowledge, doesn't come up again in the lore. So she's either dead or she's chosen to retire and never be seen again. She's pulling like a Sayla, basically.
No, she's dead. She's gonna die somehow. She'll die gloriously saving people or saving the hero or taking down the main villain. Something will happen where Mineva goes down with the ship.
Okay, so you're predicting a Mineva death. Wow, that's pretty depressing, I'll be honest, Isaac.
Well, I mean, yeah, it is sad, but that's really the only way to close the book on Zeon. And we know that happens in the UC because Zeon never really comes back after, once the Republic of Zeon's gone.
Excluding the Mars Zeon. Well, let's be clear.
Well, yeah, they barely count. Come on.
Interesting. So you're thinking Federation is still the aggressor somehow.
I'd say there's two aggressive parties. There's going to be, our obviously mandatory corrupt Federation that's been manipulating events as much as they can in the Republic of Zeon. There's going to be the Republic of Zeon elements that say, we're trying to be peaceful and stuff, but they're really preparing for war, some type of attack. And then there's going to be peaceful elements on both sides that clearly don't want a war to happen or any conflict, but they always end up being the ones that have to fight it out and, pick up the pieces.
Yeah. Interesting. I was thinking more along the lines of maybe Mineva somehow decides that the only way to get peace is to dissolve Zeon. Like maybe this is a voluntary thing on her part. But then what's left of the sleeves, or whatever Neo Zeon's calling itself at this point, maybe they'll call themselves, like the short sleeves because there's less of them now. But
the cuffs.
Yeah, the cuffs. There you go. The cuffs. So the cuffs are going to say, hey, Mineva, we don't really agree with that. And then that would create this sort of Zeon civil war.
Wow. I like it already.
And that could actually lead to Mineva's death.
Yeah, I mean, the moment she says, we should probably integrate the Federation again, I imagine a lot of people that would normally take a bullet for her would kind of immediately switch sides and say, she has to go down.
Oh, absolutely. It would totally fracture her population in two camps. And then, maybe that actually dovetails well with your idea. Maybe she goes down in the conflict, and then once she actually dies, maybe then people are like, oh, you know what? We just killed the Zeon princess. Like, maybe that wasn't a good idea. Maybe this isn't working. Yeah. And then they just kind of quit.
And then, the Federation fleet flies in, and I guarantee one of the images we'll see is, Zeon banners being taken down for the last time, and then the Federation banners going back up in Site 3.
Is the Zabi Palace even still standing?
I would be surprised if it was. I imagine, in the transition, whoever set up the Republic of Zeon in like the few hours they had after a Bawaku probably put bulldozing that at the top of their list and putting a very boring looking government structure in place just so they could hold on to power.
So I actually think this is going to be good. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, are you kidding?
Yeah, I think Mineva's due for a good series. I liked her. I liked her in Unicorn. I thought she had most of the good parts in the show, actually, outside of the action.
If you think about it, Mineva, to an extent, rivals Amuro in terms of being in the most UC series.
She does? Yeah, I mean, she was in...
She might overtake him, actually.
Probably, yeah. I mean, well, he's had a little bit of a problem lately, given that he's no longer with us. But
spoiler alert.
I think I'm on board, Isaac. I think Mineva's going down in a moment of glory to unite Zeon for peace somehow, for better or worse.
Something's gonna happen. The best way to get rid of Zeon is to make sure there's no more Zombies or Zeons left. Char's gone. Sayla's, I assume, gone by this point.
Well, I think she's just chosen to remain silent.
Nobody alive has any idea who she is, right? So she's gotten the immunity that Mineva wished she could have.
Right.
So that's not going to happen. So yeah, get rid of Mineva and that's it. Unless Mineva has kids, but that's not going to happen. Come on. We would know by now.
All right, so that's our story prediction. I would be super curious to hear what your story prediction is for a Unicorn 2 that involves the dissolution of Zeon. So that's more on the story, the plot front, Isaac. Along with the plot, I mean, this is Gundam, right? We got to sell some Gunpla.
That's right, Brian.
I believe the Unicorn, the Banshee, and the third unit in narrative, the Phoenix, I believe they're all still active to some extent. I'm not sure on the Phoenix because I haven't seen narrative, but I'm pretty sure the Unicorn and Banshee are confirmed to still be around. Where do they go visually? Are we going to get some upgrades in this show? And then are we going to get any new units of the line, right? If I think of just merchandise, Isaac, I got a white suit, a black suit, and a gold suit. Okay, those are three distinct, things that you can sell.
Right.
I think we're in store for some more colors in this line of unicorn-looking suits.
I hope so.
The one color we don't have yet, which is very Gundam, is a red one.
Yeah, it's kind of mandatory, right? Even if the person piloting it isn't going to be Char or anything like that.
Right.
We need red represented always.
So I'm thinking we get a red one and potentially a green one. Those are both very Zeonic.
Yeah.
What would you give the unicorn to like soup it up, or the Banshee?
I don't know, for the unicorn, maybe like some wings and like a handheld weapon.
Yeah.
Some type of staff. Something cinematic and theatrical almost, right?
It could become like the Gundam Pegasus or something if you gave it wings.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Damn, Brian.
Yeah. or wait, is a Pegasus a unicorn with wings, or is that something else?
It's just a flying horse.
Oh, okay. So maybe,
Yeah.
but there's a name, right, for a unicorn that has wings? Is that like an alicorn or something?
I don't know. Maybe it's a Pegacorn.
So here's what we're saying, people: the Gundam Pegacorn will fight the Cuffs, and the Cuffs will have a red one called the Not Shar unicorn.
And then whoever. I don't know. Whoever pilots the mobile suit, we can clearly always say that it was made for Char. That's why it's red, and we can't paint it.
Yeah, exactly. It was made for full frontal, but not completed in time to be used in the other conflict or something.
They always do that in the show, right? They're like, oh, we made this in the last war, and we never got to use it. Or they always find prototypes, right? The Federation and Zeon, there's always like a prototype or something laying around that nobody used that like they're waiting to give to somebody.
Yeah, like we didn't send this out there. Instead, we sent those Jims or those Zakus.
Yeah, oh, God.
So yeah, some wings. That was my initial thought too for the unicorn, because I mean they already gave it a lot of weapons. The only thing you could really do is to add on to the frame somehow, and that would need to be some wings of some form, I guess. Anything for the Banshee? I mean, that was already pretty cool looking.
I feel like you can't really add more to that, just because at a certain point it's going to become over the top. It's going to be clutter.
Yeah.
Right? It'd be like putting wings on like Gundam Death Scythe or something. Right? It's already got what it has.
You can tell the point when Death Scythe's design went slightly over the top too much. Like the wings were great, the scythe was great, and then you get to the shoes and they're like super pointy, and I was like, that's where we wear it a little bit too far.
Yeah, it's like, all right, we had like a cool thing going, then you put these monsters on it.
No offense to anyone who loves Death Scythe. We have a good friend who that's its favorite one of all time. So, particularly with the pointy feet. But the reason I bring this up is if you look at the unicorn, it's like, okay, that's a cool looking suit, and it transforms. That's neat. You look at the Banshee, and you're like, okay, they took the unicorn, they made it black, and they put some more crap on it, and it looks pretty neat. And then if you look at the Phoenix, you're like, wow. They took the unicorn, they took the Banshee, they put even more crap on it and made it an even more loud color. So I feel like these designs of the line are increasing in complexity and I'll say loudness. Does that make sense? So I feel like we're going to maintain that direction. Does that make sense? Like, we're getting more complex here.
Right. I mean, we did. It looks like we're reaching maximum size and like scope before the UC does like a quick right turn and we go to miniature mobile suits, right?
Yep.
This is the logic about why, the big change happened into much smaller mobile suits. We just got too big for our own good and the results weren't really matching the size, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm fully expecting like a red one, and it'll be like a dragon or something, like the Phoenix was like gold and patterned after a Phoenix. That's what I think is coming down the line, because we got to sell a lot of Gunpla with this, Isaac. As much Gunpla that they sold the first time, they're going to try to recreate that, right? I mean, this is your way to extend the franchise, to do a sequel.
You have to. I mean, it was so good, it deserves a sequel.
So I would love to hear your thoughts on where do you think the unicorn goes visually? Do you think we're going to get a new one of the line, or we're just going to get some upgrades to the existing suits? And now on to the last sentence, Isaac, that was just so short, yet so informative.
So quick to fill us with hope.
Yeah, so it seems like those 18 years, it seems like we're going to get not only some content there, but some animated content. And the first thing I thought to myself was, because we had that episode where we discussed, do you think Sunrise is going to retcon F91? Clearly, that is not the case. So clearly, it doesn't seem like any major retcons are coming. Maybe some minor ones, but it seems like, the producer's saying, look, what do I have to do to get to F91? Well, that still involves F91. So
yeah, and you know what? We don't see really any retcons in Gundam, do we? I mean, this isn't a series known for like redos, right? I mean, maybe we see like a better animated version, or or like a version that leads us right up to like a series like Origin, but nobody really like wipes out, certain series like, okay, 083, that was crap. We're gonna redo it, and this time there's gonna be, new characters and all that. No, they just leave it alone, and it integrates with the rest of the timeline.
Yeah, with the exception of maybe G Savior.
I still don't think that counts, really. I mean, it was, but still. God, we need to do that episode soon.
We'll add it to the list. The only major retcon I can think of is that people might bring up is like Gaia Gear, but that one's also somewhat not really a retcon, because I don't even think that was a sanctioned Gundam work. If I remember the last time I was reading about Gaia Gear, I think Tomino wrote that in some other magazine, with the intention that it would be a Gundam continuation, but I don't think it used the word Gundam or anything. So you can't really retcon something that wasn't really official in the first place, but I could be wrong about that. Yeah, but I think you're right. Outside of that, I mean, we certainly get some differences. So, for example, there are differences in the Unicorn OVA versus the Unicorn novels, but that's pretty standard. I don't think I would consider that to be a retcon.
No.
I mean, they've never just wiped a series off the map before, I don't think. Maybe in like video games and stuff, but those are all questionable canon anyway. So what was your initial thought when you saw that, Isaac?
I thought to myself that this was the answer we had discussed months ago as far as what we'd like to see in the NexT 100. We're going to be seeing all the blank spaces in the timeline fill it up. This is exactly what we're getting. Hathaway's was, I think the director even says it's like the turning point or starting point, something like that, right? Yep. In the article. And the next logical step is, okay, what comes after this? We're going to have to see the lead up to Crossbone Vanguard showing up, maybe some intrigue and secret Gundam missions and projects there. We're going to see the dissolution of Zeon, which is going to have to involve a Gundam. Maybe we're going to see stuff that takes place after F91, the collapse of Cosmo Babylonia with the Crossbone Gundam and all that. So it's happening. There's so much blank space, so many blank decades in the UC timeline. It's clear that they're going to fill them in with content. And why not? Why wouldn't they?
Absolutely. I think this means that eventually Crossbone is a lock. I think that's coming. I don't think it's necessarily coming soon, because it sounds like they're going a little bit in chronological order. Like maybe they want to do the dissolution of Zeon, do Hathaway's Flash, fill in the time between then Hathaway's Flash and F91. And then after that, like you said, they're going to have to turn to that collapse of Cosmo Babylonia and to Crossbone Gundam. And to me, this seems like a big opportunity here, Isaac, because Unicorn and Hathaway's Flash are great. They're high budget, super good to watch, but they do require a good bit of Gundam knowledge. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah. You need to understand where the story's starting and everything involved, because there's just a lot of moving pieces, a lot of lore that gets referenced, and you don't really get that handed to you. At least I would be surprised if they do a very long exposition as far as who these characters are, what Hathaway's been through, right? That's really not going to happen. Yeah,
I mean, maybe we'll get something, but yeah, I agree. I mean, you're watching the sequel to a movie that was the conclusion to 3 40-plus episode TV series. So there's a lot of baggage there.
Yeah, it's a very gray series, too, in terms of morality, as opposed to the first series. To an extent, yeah, there was some gray morality, but for the most part, as a viewer, especially here in the United States, you can watch and like, okay, the guys in the bright colored uniforms are probably good guys. Everybody else, in the fascist looking uniforms they're the bad guys, and this is very similar to World War II. Okay, we know where we are. Let's go.
Yeah, and then like with Unicorn, I'm sure a lot of people are watching that, and that's their first experience of the Universal Century, and I'm sure they can kind of follow along what's happening, but they definitely won't get the full impact. Like I don't even think Unicorn's a great place to like start the Universal Century. It is like from a visual perspective, but from a story perspective, that's probably really confusing.
Yeah, you'd have to be willing to maybe pause it and take out your phone, especially at the beginning, right? You'd be like, okay, This looks like a cool anime. Let me kind of read up. Like, oh, okay, there was a war. This is this guy, and all right, these are the bad guys. Okay, I can kind of go along with it. All right. Some scenes, I'm sure they probably throw you for a loop, right? You're like, what the heck are they talking about? And oh, geez, Laplace, what?
Yeah, or like, the whole thing about the pull clone. That's like a deep cut from the Zeta era. Yeah. I was kind of shocked they even did that. You're definitely not going to get the significance of that having not watched the other shows. So my point here is that I think this is a big opportunity because you need to have something out there in this franchise that's modern, like those shows, but it's also simpler. And we have a model for that already. If you think back, I mean, the shows are older now. They're aging out of what people are willing to watch, even though they're still good. But we have stuff like that already in 8th MS Team, in 0080, War in the Pocket, and 0083, Stardust Memory. Those all act as really good introductions to the Universal Century for non-fans because they're small, they're consumable, and they're self-contained for the most part. I mean, there's references to the overall conflict, but I mean, that's how you got into it, Isaac. We need
Pretty
that,
much,
but for a modern audience.
Yeah, and a lot of it, is just, I guess, willing to put in the time to catch up.
Yeah. So my thought is we need that, but for a modern audience, for the UC Next 100. And we already have the material for that. There are at least 6 stories that I can think of set between those 18 years that have relatively little to do with the past. So those are the Fastest Formula, which starts in UC 0112, I believe. This is actually, I think, still being published. I haven't read any of this yet. It's kind of difficult to find synopses on these things. But I'm pretty sure this tells the story of when they started making the F90 units. I think they made 3 units, and then we see those 3 units come through the next 10 years or so here. So that manga is currently running. They greenlit that manga, a few years ago. They might have been thinking about this for some time. I wonder if they start with that. So in connection with that manga is when they started putting out the Master Grade F90 with all the mission packs. So it's a lot of merchandise already, Isaac. I mean, there's potential there. That's with the A pack, the B pack. See, they're doing one for each letter. You can sell that all day. Then we have Mobile Suit Gundam F90, which we did a review on for this podcast. That takes place in UC 0120, and that features units 1 and 2 of F90, which was the original first time you saw a Gundam F90 before they started releasing the Fastest Formula. And then we have Mobile Suit Gundam F91 Formula Wars 0122, which was that Super Nintendo game that we played, Isaac. And that one features Unit 1 again, going against the Mars Zeon.
That was a nightmare.
I mean, yeah, gameplay-wise, maybe not the best. But story-wise, you could make a...
That's a series. Yeah. God, yeah, we fought all over the Earth sphere.
Yeah, visually, it would be great. And, all the characters are new. You'd have, I wouldn't follow perhaps the SNES cutscenes, to the letter, to the T perhaps. I would probably make the story a little better. Maybe flesh it out a little bit. But, I think the material's there. You've got a setup, battle, and a good climax. And it would look great. It would be short, consumable. Same thing with the previous 2. And there's 3 more. There's Mobile Suit Gundam Climax UC. I think that's a video game, I think from the mid 2000s. And then there was a companion manga called Bonds of the Bloodline or something like that. And that takes place in UC 0123. And that one picks up from F90, Isaac, where remember in F90 when the Mars Zeon stole Unit 2 and they rebuilt it and they made it red, and then it they lost in the final battle. But they rebuild that unit, that Unit 2, that F90 Unit 2, into a new design. I'm pretty sure someone pilots it in that manga against the Crossbone Vanguard. And it's a woman pilot too. So that's pretty cool. I haven't found that manga translated. I would like to read it though. And then there's another F90 manga that takes place in UC 123 called Cluster Gundam. I think that's Unit 3. The third unit of the F90 story. And the pilot of that, I believe, also takes on some Crossbone Vanguard. And then the last one I can think of is Silhouette Formula F91, which, again, we did a review on that one. That one was probably not our favorite. But all those things, Isaac, they're all short. They all lead up to F91. You could make OVAs of anywhere from 1 to 5 episodes on each of those and have those become the new classics that everyone refers to. Right? If you go to recommend Gundam to your friend, do you go tell them to watch the 1979 Gundam first? Probably not. You probably say, you should watch this show, but if you want to ease into it a little bit, go watch 8th MS Team or 0083.
Yeah.
So we need something new that can replace that.
Pretty much. And also, I feel like we might reach the point where, okay, what Gundam series do you like? You see, and like, I kind of like the after 100, and then some people are gonna be like, oh, I like pre 100. We're gonna get to a point where the divide is pretty much gonna be: do you want to watch the Federation fight Zeon, or do you want to watch the Federation fight all these this Skittles bag full of villainous organizations?
The Skittles bag.
Well, I mean, once Zeon held the line for so long, right? And then once they're gone, it was like every decade a new enemy popped up with new uniforms from a different side or somewhere else, and like they had to be dealt with.
Absolutely.
Right? We traded a bar of chocolate for Skittles, right? The chocolate bar was really big, and we knew exactly what it was each bite, But now the Skittles, man, you don't know what color you're going to get.
It's just chaos. People are eating yellows and greens.
You drop the bag, great. Now you have to pick it all up.
There's that one guy who's hogging the reds. That guy's always there.
Come on, buddy. We have to work together on the yellows.
Nobody likes get through those if you want the reds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Ogata, he didn't really provide much more than that one sentence. But my point is the intent is there. Like, he's clearly thinking about it. And that's, to my knowledge, that's most of the material that they have for that 18-year time frame in the Universal Century. Uh-huh. So I fully expect, maybe we don't see all 6 of those, Isaac, but I'm thinking we at least see 1 or 2.
I hope so. I mean, there's no reason. Okay, maybe they have a better story idea, but these stories are pretty much ready to go. So why not use them and fill out the time spaces,
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, they might not like all of them. So even if they give us 2 to 3 animated works in this time frame, I would guess that at least one of them would be original, right?
Yeah.
They're not just going to go adapt every single manga property. I mean, that's not a winning formula. But to me, this seems like an easy thing, Isaac. I mean, they could brand this like an overarching series name, like, the Formula Wars or something. And that would just cover this time. Because all these stories, they all relate to, like, the Gundam F90s. So I think you just pitch it like that or something.
Why not? I mean, pitch it as, really, the fans get to keep all the old content they already like. And this is just new stuff that will make the content better because it'll lead up to it. We'll probably get a lot of visits from old characters that we haven't seen in a while. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of Crossbone characters, right, showing up in the lead up to F91 based on whatever series they're going to make that explains all that happened before the Crossbone Vanguard and Cosmo Babylonia. So it's kind of an exciting time. In a way, they might have a chance to redeem their missteps, like Crossbone Vanguard. We'll be able to maybe see it in the Proto Vanguard form, and it'll be really cool, I hope. Same with the characters. Maybe we'll get a lot of Kurozo, for all we know, and whoever he fought as they were building up the Mobile Suit Force to eventually take the frontier side.
Yeah, I mean, any more background they could give us on the Crossbone Vanguard would be beneficial, if they're going to go this route, which it seems like they're committed to not retconning anything. So if they're going to go this route, then yeah, I think they need to fill it out, and they need to do it in a way that attracts new fans. So yeah, that's my pitch. Not that Ogata-san is listening to our podcast, but if he is, I think you need some new classics, man. You can do it. Those side story 1 Year War shows are great. I think that gets people into the Universal Century, so we need something for that to get people into the UC Next 100. Not that Hathaway's Flash and the Unicorn sequel aren't great, because I'm pretty sure they're going to be amazing, but I think that's more for people like myself and Isaac who we're already on board.
Yeah, maybe they'll frame it in a way, since each one's almost going to be a mini intro to whatever series it leads up to. Like F91 or even beyond that. Maybe it'll be framed as sort of an intro to Gundam in a way. New characters on little side stories, and hey, there happen to be giant robots. There's a evil force brewing, and you have to watch the good guys and the heroes, save the day.
If Ogata came to you and he was like, Isaac, make me a story in between Hathaway's Flash and F91, what would you do?
Wow, I would do like almost like a Gundam conspiracy thing. So if you remember in F91, there was a lot of chatter about how European frontier side looked. I would flat out make a series about how some members of the Federation clearly designed the colony knowing Crossbone Vanguard would take over it. But, Brian, the plot doesn't stop there. Originally, there was a Gundam that the Crossbone Vanguard were also supposed to seize. Ooh. And it's about how that didn't exactly work out in the Crossbone Vanguard's favor, but they still went ahead with Cosmo Babylonia anyways.
Oh, interesting. Would the Gundam be like a Crossbone Vanguard looking Gundam, I assume?
Yeah, it would have been maybe even miniature or something. Or I don't know. It would have been an ace in the hole they had. That way, based on a lot of, I guess, sort of hints that we had, the Crossbone Vanguard was clearly ahead in terms of mobile suit development, right? Because they had miniature mobile suits.
Mm-hmm.
Iron Mask was clearly around or aware of what happened in the 1 Year War since he knew about mobile armors, right? That's what he built. Yeah. And even with the development of bugs showed that they had a very forward look to weapons and stuff like that. So with that in mind, the Crossbone Vanguard clearly knew that Gundams played vital roles in previous wars, so they actually had a plan in the works to seize a Gundam that was maybe special made for them, or at least what they needed it for. Maybe like some type of a colony occupation Gundam, something like that. And their plan originally was to seize it, and that would be sort of their leader taking control of the frontier side. But what would you know, Brian? A plucky hero and a bunch of lovable characters get in the way and thwart their plans.
Those damn plucky heroes.
Yeah. You damn university interns.
You're all just such good mobile suit pilots.
Yeah, stopping the prototype. You damn kid that fell into the cockpit during the battle.
That's a great idea, and actually I like that it draws on that one line from the movie, which was probably one of the most underrated plot developments of the movie that no one really talked about.
They had such huge implications, and we never hear about it.
Yeah,
that would be like finding out that members of the Federation were helping Zeon.
Right.
Way when Zeon was alive. So.
Yep. And I think we said this on our F91 podcast, but I'm sure Tomino was like, "No, I really want that line in the movie because that movie moves so fast. Every second mattered." And yet that line was still there. So it was very, I'm going to take that it was very intentional on his part.
It had to. It makes sense about why their colony looks like that. We never see colonies look like that, right?
Yeah.
Amuro's colony didn't look like that at all.
No.
So clearly something was happening behind the scenes. So this would have been an explanation of what exactly happened and what else was also happening behind the scenes. How about you, Brian? What would you want if you could control a series that was taking place between I guess the fall of Zeon and then F91?
I would do a series about building F90 units 1 and 2. This might already be covered in the fastest formula. I haven't read it. But one thing that we didn't actually talk about in our F90 review, because it's not really mentioned too much in the manga, but if you go read about it a little bit, Unit 1 is based on Amuro's pilot data, and Unit 2 is based on Char's pilot data. They're AI computers on board.
Uh-huh.
So I would do a series where they're building those units and they have to go, maybe they need to go retrieve part of the original Gundam or part of things that Amuro piloted during the Grips era to get the data out of it. And maybe there's some other people interested in that data as well. They could also be trying to find old suits that Char piloted. So I think that'd be fun. Very side story-ish.
I like it. In a way, side stories are really the best way to fill up a lot of the gaps, right?
Yep. And it would give you a reason to have Amuro and Char in the show. Obviously not in the flesh, perhaps, but maybe they would encounter their new type presence, which clearly is still out there roaming.
I'm surprised we don't see that stuff more often, because Lala seemed like she could just pop in whenever she wanted, right?
Yeah, agree.
As much as I dislike her.
Yeah, I mean, she was talented. You can't take that away from her.
Yeah, but I don't know. Just ridiculous.
So yeah, I think Isaac and I are very excited after this small smattering of news, but it's enormously important, I think. And I don't feel like enough people are talking about it, but I think it's big news.
The chatter will increase once we start seeing actual images, screen caps, things like that, the trailer.
Yeah, I mean, that could be years away, though.
Yeah, but I mean, at least we know it's coming. At least we know the UC won't be, abandoned, or the only thing we can expect is a dub of Double Zeta or something like that.
I don't think we're ever going to get a dub of Double Zeta unless someone out there has that Southeast Asian dub on their VHS tape that they recorded in 2005 or whenever it came out.
Maybe. Maybe we'll get a fan dub or something that'll widely circulate. I don't know.
We should do the fan dub.
Wow. Do we do all the characters, or do we
Yes, just us two.
We have listeners. Yeah, we assign listeners different characters.
If you'd be interested in participating in our Double Zeta fan dub, please let us know. We'll put you on the list.
You must have a microphone. It could be cheap.
Yes.
It's okay. Don't break the bank, but you must have one. Even your laptop micro. Actually, no. You can just use your phone, I guess.
That'll be part of the charm. The audio quality will be so bad,
Yeah.
and all the mics will be different, so there will be no consistency whatsoever.
Why does Haman sound like she's talking in the bathroom?
Because she is. That's the only place in the person who voices Haman's house where she can get some privacy to record her lines.
Yeah, apparently. You hear people in the background talking or yelling.
Yeah, so any last thoughts, Isaac?
Just get ready for some more great UC content, and keep an eye out for Hathaway's Flash. Whatever happens, be sure to support it once it is released.
Yeah, we need more of that UC content, so I think that's important. Alrighty, everybody. That'll be it from us tonight, so stay safe out there, and have a good one.
Don't forget, before you go to sleep and after you like, comment, subscribe, stand next to your bed, get on your knees, put your hands together, look up at the ceiling, and hail Zeon.